The first sign that something was wrong came when the ship's gravity hiccuped. Not enough to throw a man across the deck, nothing dramatic like that, but just enough to make Elias Ward's coffee ripple in its cup. After 27 years in the Terran Defense Fleet, Elias had learned to respect small warnings. Big disasters always started quietly. He set the cup down, wiped his hands on his worn jacket, and listened. The Wayfarer was an old cargo hauler, patched together from 3 wars' worth of surplus and stubbornness. It creaked when it changed attitude, hummed when the reactor was happy, and groaned like an old dog when something annoyed it. Right now, it was doing something else entirely. It was whispering. Elias frowned and pulled his sidearm from its magnetized clip. He hadn't fired it in years, not since he'd taken this lonely contract. Hauling salvage between fringe systems, but habits like that didn't die icily. You didn't survive the Kepri insurgency by ignoring your instincts. He followed the sound down the aft corridor, boots silent on the deck plating. The whispering grew clearer. 2 voices, soft, panicked. "Please don't call them. I told you, if he finds us." Elias stopped outside the cargo bay. Slowly, carefully, he palmed the manual, override, and slid the door open to figures. Froze in the middle of the bay. They were small, barely up to his, chest inlimbed and wrapped in mismatched cloaks that clearly hadn't been designed for their bodies. Their skin was a pale, iridescent blue, catching the harsh cargo lights like polished stone. Long, translucent crests swept back from their temples, trembling as they stared at him. They were identical twins, and they were standing beside an open smuggling crate he knew had been sealed when he left port. The one on the left dropped to her knees instantly. Hands raised in a gesture Elias recognized from 100 species. "Surrender, please," she said, voice trembling but clear. "Please don't call the Emperor's Guard." The other twin followed a heartbeat later, clutching her sister's arm like a lifeline. Elias didn't lower his weapon. He didn't raise it either. He just stared, because the last time he'd seen that color of skin, that crest shape, that particular way of holding one's head like the universe was always watching, was on the battlefield of Virex Prime, and the memory burned like acid. The Virexian Empire didn't call them guards. They called them custodians of order. Everyone else called them what they were. Executioners. Elias had watched an Imperial Guard unit wipe out an entire refugee column because someone, somewhere, had accused them of sedition. Men, women, children, species that didn't even belong to the Empire cut down in a display of peacekeeping. That day, Elias learned something important. The Empire didn't tolerate loose ends, and these girls were very clearly loose ends. He exhaled slowly and finally spoke. "Start talking," he said, "and do it carefully." The twin on the left nodded frantically. "My name is Sailor. This is my sister, Marin. We didn't mean to trespass. We didn't know whose ship it was. We were desperate." Marin swallowed hard. They were coming. The guard, they always come. Elias holstered his weapon, but he didn't relax. "Why were you in a sealed crate on my ship?" Sailor hesitated. Marin answered instead. "Because no one looks inside scrap shipments headed for human space." That was unfortunately true. Elias ran a hand through his graying hair. "You're Imperial citizens." Sailor shook her head violently. "We were, until yesterday." Marin's voice dropped to a whisper. "Until our father refused." There it was. Elias leaned against a cargo container, old joints protesting. Refused what? To design a neural compliance lattice, Sailor said. A way to remove inconvenient thoughts from occupied worlds. Ilias closed his eyes for a moment. The Empire was always innovating new ways to be monstrous. They executed him, Marin said softly, publicly. To make an example. Sailor's crest flickered with Kalia's sign of grief. Elias realized. Then they came for us. Because knowledge is hereditary. Because potential rebellion must be extinguished. Elias opened his eyes and looked at them properly now. They weren't warriors. They weren't spies. They were scared, grieving children who had just watched their world collapse. How old are you? He asked. 21 cycles, Sailor said. In human years, Elias clarified, Maer, hesitated. 19. Elias cursed under his breath. You realize, he said slowly, that harboring Imperial fugitives makes me a criminal in half the galaxy. Sailor bowed her head. We know. That is why we asked you not to call them. Merrin looked up at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. If you call the guard, they will thank you. They will reward you. Humans are. Respected veterans. That stung more than he expected. Kid, Elias said quietly, respect wasn't what I earned out there. He turned and walked to the control console, pulling up the ship's status. No unauthorized pings yet. No Imperial trackers. Whoever had helped them into the crate had known what they were doing. He glanced back at them. Did anyone see you bored? Sailor shook her head. The dockmaster was bribed. Ilya snorted. Figures. He stared at the navigation map. 1 jump away was neutral space. 2 jumps away was human territory. But Imperial patrols haunted the lanes between like sharks. If he dumped them at the next station, they might live a few days. Maybe weeks if he kept them. He remembered Verrick's prime. He remembered the screaming. He remembered standing in the mud with a broken rifle while Imperial boots marched past bodies, like they were trash. Elias Ward had sworn an oath once to protect humanity, but no one had ever said it had to be only humanity. All right, he said finally. You're not going back in the crate, and I'm not calling the guard. Sailor's head snapped up. You're serious? Dead serious, Elias said. But listen to me carefully. From this moment on, you do exactly what I say. No wandering. No transmissions. No heroics. Marin nodded so fast her crest blurred. Yes, yes, we promise. Elias allowed himself a thin smile. Good, because if the guard catches us, they won't just kill you. The guard caught their trail 2 days later. It started with a single, encrypted ping, echoing through the Wayfarer's array. Imperial frequency. High priority. Sailor was in the galley with Elias when the alert chimed. She flinched like she'd been struck. They've found us, she whispered. Elias killed the signal without responding. Not yet. They will, Marin said from the corridor. They always do. Elias straightened, spine creaking. Then they're about to have a very bad day. He moved with the calm efficiency of someone who'd done this before too many times. He rerouted power, masked the ship's signature, and altered their course just enough to look like a drifting wreck. Then he opened an old locker. Inside was armor he hadn't worn since the war, dented, scarred, painted, with unit markings long since decommissioned. SAE Lestered. You are a civilian, Elias snorted as he slid the chest plate on. That's what my paperwork says. The Imperial cutter emerged from hyperspace like a blade, sleek and merciless. Its transmission cut through the void. Unidentified vessel. Power down and prepare for inspection. Marin clutched Sailor's hand. Please. Elias activated the external speakers. This is Elias Ward, he said evenly. Terran Defense Fleet, retired. You are in neutral space. State your authority. There was a pause. Then, by order of the Emperor, we are authorized to retrieve Imperial property. Elias's jaw tightened. Those people are not property. Step aside, human, the guard replied coldly, or be treated as an accomplice. Elias smiled a hard, humorless thing. I was an accomplice once, he said, to letting you monsters walk away. He cut the channel and powered. Weapons the Wayfarer technically wasn't supposed to have. The fight was short, violent, one-sided, in a way that surprised even the guard. They hadn't expected an old human freighter to move like a warship or its captain, to fight like a man with nothing left to lose. When it was over, the Imperial cutter drifted, crippled but intact. Elias didn't finish them. That was a message in itself. Hours later, as the stars stretched into the blue lines of hyperspace, Sailor and Marin sat quietly in the cockpit. You could have turned us in, Sailor said. Many would have. Elias kept his eyes on the jump tunnel. Many did. Marin hesitated. Why didn't you? Elias thought of Virix Prime, of promises broken, of ghosts that never slept. Because humanity learned something the hard way, he said. We learned that power without mercy isn't order. It's just cruelty with a uniform. Sailor smiled faintly. What will you do with us? Elias glanced at them. Well, he said, human space has asylum laws. And a lot of people who don't like emperors. Marin's eyes widened. You would sponsor us? I would, Elias said simply. The twins bowed their heads. A gesture of gratitude so deep it made Elias uncomfortable, as the Wayfarer jumped towards safety. One truth echoed quietly through the void. The Emperor's guard, ruled by fear, but they had just met something far more dangerous. A human who remembered. Asterisk.